Formula One is supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport. The fastest drivers on the planet, the sharpest minds in racing, competing at speeds that would make most people's vision blur. But here's the thing about Formula One. It is also one of the most expensive businesses in the world. And when you have enough money, sometimes the rules change. Sometimes talent isn't the only currency that gets you a seat. Today we're looking at 3 drivers who represent 2 completely different roads to the same destination: Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and Lance Stroll. One of these names doesn't belong in the same sentence as the other 2, and by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why and what it says about the state of Formula One. Let's start with the money. Lance Stroll was born in Montreal in 1998. His father, Lance Stroll, is a Canadian billionaire fashion mogul who made his fortune acquiring luxury brands like Tommy Hilfiger and bringing them back from the brink. By the time Lance was a teenager, the family was worth an estimated $3 billion. Money was never going to be a problem. Lance showed some promise in junior categories. He won the Formula 3 European Championship in 2016, which is a genuine achievement. But Formula 3 is a long way from Formula 1, and the path from one to the other is usually years of brutal competition, results pressure, and making the right people take notice. Lance didn't exactly follow that path. In 2017, at just 18 years old, Lance Stroll made his Formula 1 debut with Williams. His father had pumped significant sponsorship money into the team to secure the seat. Within a year, it was clear that this arrangement had more to do with finances than form. Lance scored 1 podium in his rookie season, a 3rd place in Azerbaijan, one of the most chaotic races of that year, but his overall performance was underwhelming. He crashed frequently, struggled to match his teammate, and the criticism was sharp. Then in 2018, Lance Stroll did something that made everything else look small. He led a consortium of investors to purchase the struggling Force India Formula One team out of administration. The team was renamed Racing Point, and Lance immediately had a seat. Not because he earned it, but because his father owned the building. In 2020, Lance Stroll took over Aston Martin, rebranded Racing Point as Aston Martin F1, and there was Lance, still in the car. Think about that for a moment. This is not a driver who climbed the ranks on the back of results alone. This is a driver whose father literally bought a Formula One team and then handed his son the keys. And to be clear, Lance Stroll is not a terrible driver. He has shown flashes of pace on his day. But flashes are not enough when you're using your position to block a grid slot that dozens of hungrier, faster drivers would give anything to have. Over 8 seasons in F1, Lance has 3 podiums, no race wins, a career points tally that consistently puts him behind less funded teammates. The numbers tell the story clearly. Compare that to what Lewis Hamilton had growing up, and the gap isn't just in performance, it's in everything that came before the performance. Lewis Hamilton was born in Stevenage, England in 1985 to a working-class family. His mother, Carmen, and father, Anthony, separated when he was young. Lewis grew up with his mom initially before eventually going to live with his dad, stepmother, and younger half-brother, Nicholas, who has cerebral palsy. This was not a wealthy household. This was a family where making ends meet was the daily reality. Anthony Hamilton worked as an IT project manager during the week and took on extra work wherever he could to fund Lewis's karting. He worked multiple jobs simultaneously at points, manual work, anything that kept the kart running. When the costs became too much, Anthony sat his son down and had a blunt conversation. If Lewis wanted to keep racing, Anthony would need to get a better job. He did. He scraped and saved and sacrificed years of his own life, working tirelessly so that his son could keep competing. By the age of 8, Lewis was already winning karting championships. At 10, he walked up to Ron Dennis, the then McLaren boss, at an awards dinner and told him directly that he wanted to race for McLaren one day. Dennis wrote in his notebook, "Phone me in 9 years." Lewis kept that in mind and kept winning. By 1998, McLaren had signed him to their young driver program, but even with that backing, the journey was not smooth or guaranteed. Lewis moved through Formula Renault, F3, GP2, dominating at every level, but always with the knowledge that one bad season, one wrong result could end the dream. He made his F1 debut with McLaren in 2007 and almost won the championship in his rookie season, something that had never been done before. He won his first title in 2008 in one of the most dramatic finales in F1 history, needing to overtake Timo Glock on the final corner of the final lap of the final race. 7 world championships later, Lewis Hamilton is statistically the greatest Formula One driver of all time. Most race wins, most pole positions, most podiums. Records that stood for decades crumbled under him, and none of it was handed to him. Every step was earned on merit, funded by sacrifice, and forged by a level of hunger that money simply cannot manufacture. Max Verstappen's story is different again, but no less brutal in its own way. Max was born in 1997 in Hasselt, Belgium, to Jos Verstappen, himself a former Formula One driver who raced in the 1990s and early 2000s, and Sophie Kumpen, a successful kart racer. On paper, Max had an advantage that Hamilton didn't, a father who knew the sport from the inside. But what Jos Verstappen put his son through makes it very clear that knowing the sport and having money for the sport are two entirely different things. Jos Verstappen was relentless, brutal even. He drove Max to races across Europe from the earliest age, pulling him out of conventional schooling so he could focus entirely on racing. When Max made mistakes, there was no comfort. There were conversations at the side of the track that other karting parents would describe as intense, to put it politely. Jos's philosophy was simple. If Max wanted to be the best, he had to be pushed harder than anyone else, no excuses, no softness. By 13, Max was already being watched closely by junior teams. He joined Red Bull's Young Driver program at a young age and moved up to Formula 3 in 2014. By 2015, at just 17 years old, he was in Formula One with Toro Rosso, the youngest driver to ever start an F1 race, a record that still stands. In 2016, he was promoted to the senior Red Bull team mid-season and won his very first race with them in Spain at 18 years old. The path was not paid for in the same way as Lance Stroll's was. The Verstappen family had racing connections and some resources, but Max's progression was driven almost entirely by results. Junior teams don't promote 17-year-olds out of charity. Red Bull doesn't hand race seats to teenagers based on who their father knows. You have to perform every single session, every single race. Max did. 4 world championships since 2021, including 3 in a row, confirm that the pressure Jos applied, as uncomfortable as it looked from the outside, produced something extraordinary. The contrast between these 3 drivers is not just about talent versus money in the abstract. It is about what it actually costs to reach the top of the sport, and who is paying that cost. Anthony Hamilton worked multiple jobs for years. Jos Verstappen dragged his son across Europe and pushed him to his limits in pursuit of excellence. These were sacrifices of time, of comfort, of family stability. The kind of sacrifice that doesn't have a shortcut. Lance Stroll spent an estimated $80 million buying into Williams before eventually acquiring the entire Force India operation for around $90 million. A different kind of investment entirely. And the results, across a combined 15-plus years of Hamilton and Verstappen's careers versus Lance's 8, reflect exactly what each approach produces. Formula One has always had pay drivers. It has always had money mixed into the grid. But the conversation about Lance Stroll cuts deeper because his father didn't just sponsor a team, he bought one. And in doing so, he created a scenario where his son's presence on the grid is almost entirely insulated from the consequences that every other driver lives by: perform or go home. Hamilton and Verstappen both know what it means to have everything on the line. Lance Stroll has never had to find that out. And whether or not that makes him a bad person, it makes him a fascinating symbol of everything that Formula One still has to reckon with when it comes to what should actually get you a seat in the fastest cars on Earth. The answer, in an ideal world, should always be speed. Not a surname, not a bank balance. Speed.